He wasn't a general. He wasn't a warlord. He wasn't even a particularly imposing man. He was a school teacher. His real name was Saloth Sar. Born in 1925 in rural Cambodia, his family had connections to the royal court. As a child, he briefly lived in the palace in Phnom Penh. By every account, he was pleasant, soft-spoken, polite. That's the detail that should disturb you most. Because the monsters we prepare for, the ones with rage in their eyes, the ones who seem dangerous from the beginning, those aren't the ones history actually warns us about. The truly catastrophic ones look like your neighbor, your colleague, your teacher. In 1949, Saloth Sar won a scholarship to study in Paris. He was supposed to study radio electronics. He failed his exams 3 years in a row. But he found something else, something that would change everything. He found Marxism, the radical strand that believed society had to be completely destroyed before it could be reborn. He read Mao. He read Stalin. He absorbed theories that said cities were corrupt, intellectuals were the enemy, and the rural peasant was the true revolutionary force. Here's the detail nobody talks about. He was reading all of this as a student in one of the world's most sophisticated cities, as an intellectual himself. The ideology he was building would eventually demand the death of people exactly like him. He returned to Cambodia in 1953, and he never forgot what he had read. For years, Saloth Sar operated in the shadows. He taught literature at a private school in Phnom Penh. His students remember him fondly. Meanwhile, he was secretly building the Khmer Rouge, a communist guerrilla movement operating from Cambodia's jungles. He renamed himself Pol Pot, and he climbed patiently and methodically to the top. This is a pattern you see in history's most dangerous figures. They don't announce themselves. They wait. They plan. They let others underestimate them. For years, nobody in Cambodia's government even knew his real name. He was referred to only as Brother Number One. Anonymous, faceless, everywhere and nowhere. The conditions that gave him power matter. Cambodia in the late 1960s was being secretly bombed by the United States as part of the Vietnam War. Tens of thousands of civilians killed. The country destabilized. The government corrupt. The rural population suffering. Pol Pot offered them a dream, a Cambodia without exploitation, without poverty, without foreign interference, a return to a pure agrarian past. In April 1975, after years of civil war, the Khmer Rouge marched into Phnom Penh, and the dream became something else entirely. On April 17, 1975, the Khmer Rouge took control of Cambodia. Within 48 hours, they began emptying the cities. Not metaphorically, literally. Soldiers went door to door in Phnom Penh, a city of 2 million people, and ordered everyone out. Immediately. They said it was temporary. They said the Americans were going to bomb the city. They said people could return in 3 days. Nobody returned. The sick were pushed out of hospitals in their beds. The elderly were forced to walk. Babies died on the roads. Pol Pot had declared year zero. The idea, Cambodian society was so corrupted by capitalism and modernity that it had to be completely erased, rebuilt from nothing, from the land, from the peasants. Money was abolished, schools were closed, hospitals shut, religion banned, books burned, eyeglasses were dangerous. They suggested you could read, which meant you were an intellectual, which meant you were an enemy. The country was renamed Democratic Kampuchea. The calendar was reset to year one, and the killing began. But here's what I need you to hold on to as we go into the next section. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't soldiers out of control. This was policy, documented, deliberate, designed. that changes everything about how you understand what comes next. The Khmer Rouge established a network of prison camps across Cambodia. The most notorious was S-21, a former school in Phnom Penh, converted into an interrogation and torture center. Of approximately 17,000 people sent there, only 7 survived. 7. The Khmer Rouge kept meticulous records. They photographed every prisoner. They documented every confession, most extracted under torture. They filed everything carefully. In the countryside, people were worked to death in forced labor camps. Starvation was widespread, not because there was no food, but because the regime exported rice while its own people died. The targeting wasn't random. Intellectuals were priority targets. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, anyone who wore glasses, anyone who spoke a foreign language. They called city people new people, tainted by the old world, less than human. Between 1975 and 1979, an estimated 1.5 to 2 million Cambodians died. In a country of 8 million people, 1 in 4. Let that number land for a second. Imagine losing 1 in 4 people you know. Your family, your friends, your neighborhood, gone. In 4 years, by government policy. So who was Pol Pot, really? Because this is what ShadowCodex is about. Not just the body count, the mind behind it. Pol Pot was not clinically insane. He wasn't a sadist who enjoyed violence for its own sake. He was something more dangerous. He was a true believer. Historians who have studied his writings and speeches describe a man who genuinely, completely believed in what he was doing. The suffering was necessary. The deaths were the price of paradise. This is the ideological killer's psychology. You see it in Stalin, in Mao, in Robespierre. The pattern is always the same. A total vision of a perfect society, a willingness to treat human beings as means to an end, and an escalating cycle of purges, because when the utopia doesn't arrive, someone must be to blame. Pol Pot also had one more ingredient: paranoia. In his final years, he began purging his own loyal cadres, people who had been with him from the beginning. He saw enemies everywhere, the revolution consuming itself. This too is the pattern. The ideological killer eventually runs out of external enemies and turns inward. And here's what I promised you at the beginning. The thing almost no documentary mentions. Pol Pot gave an interview in 1997, 18 years after his regime collapsed, and he showed zero remorse. He said to his final breath that he had acted out of love for his country. That's the most disturbing part of this entire story. Not the killing, the conviction. The Khmer Rouge fell in 1979, not because the world intervened, because Vietnam invaded. Pol Pot fled into the jungle, and for the next decade, the international community, including the United States, continued to recognize the Khmer Rouge as Cambodia's legitimate government at the UN. Because geopolitics. He died in 1998, in his sleep, of natural causes. Never tried, never convicted. The lesson isn't that we should fear school teachers. The lesson is that we should understand how ordinary people convince themselves that mass death is justified by a beautiful enough dream. That's the real psychological profile, not of one man, of an idea. Write me in the comments. Had you heard of Pol Pot before this? Subscribe to ShadowCodex. The next profile is coming.